Green light when you're ready.
On the 7th?
Does everybody turn their mics
Yes,
on?
I turned them all on.
Okay.
There's Ken.
Oh, here it is.
All right. Call to order the Oberlin School District Board of Education meeting for Monday, March 8th. Call the roll.
Mr. Stanley? Yes. Ms. Gadsden?
Yes.
Ms. Deagle?
Yes.
Ms. Rebecca?
Yes.
Ms. Shum?
Here. All right. I need a motion for the adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any changes, discussion for this highly complicated agenda today? All right. Call the roll.
Mr. Stanley? Here. Ms. Gadsden?
Yes. Here.
Ms. Deagle?
Yes.
Ms. Rebecca?
Yes.
Ms. Shum?
It was really simple. Yes.
I don't know what's happening.
We had it all mixed up.
I started that one off wrong.
Oh, right, we're supposed to be sitting here.
Study
I'm
topics. Presentation, discussion. Dr. Hall.
Tonight we have a study session on social emotional learning. Mr. Neneme's here with several guests to give an update on the district of some of our interventions that we've done throughout the district on social emotional learning and also our diversity training as well. I'll turn over to Mr. Neneme.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. It's interesting holding a mic like this. I don't know if I should sing or tell a joke or what. So here's what I would like to start, if you can help me, Josh. I would like everyone right now just to I would like to get into a mindfulness as an icebreaker to kind of bring us all in. It'll be a couple of minutes.
Hello, welcome to Yoga with Kathy. Let's get started. Come to a seated position. Place your feet on the floor. Sit up nice and tall. Begin to make your eyelids heavy. Just start to notice your breath. Notice if your breath is long and smooth. Notice if it's short and choppy. Just notice, no judgment. Place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. Take 3 deep breaths. Relax your hands on your lap. Begin to relax different body parts. Let's just bring a little bit of awareness to your body. Notice your forehead. Notice if you're feeling any tension. Breathe in. And as you breathe out, relax your forehead muscles. Notice your jaw. Breathe in and relax those muscles as you breathe out. Notice your tongue. Breathe in. Relax your tongue. Notice your shoulders. breathe in and relax your shoulders. Place one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. Just take 3 deep breaths. Relax your hands, come back to your normal breathing. Notice if your breathing changed at all. It's fine if it did, and it's fine if it did not. Just notice. Become aware of the sound of your breath. And become aware of the sounds in the room. Slowly begin to open your eyes. Place your hands together. Just give them a little rub. Place them over your eyes. Breathe in and out.
So that activity right there is it's a mindful activity, part of yoga. That's what we be in the way of the camera. That happens every Monday, right? So staff members can take full advantage of it. And what I found out is about 25% of our staff are utilizing this. Now, I won't take a poll because I don't want my feelings to be hurt, but some of you probably really enjoyed it, and then some of you may have said, could we move on? And that's the reality of it. And some teachers are using it, and some even are using it with their students. So every Monday, we send out a new video. Every month, it's a new theme, and they have access to it to go in and out all week long. Okay? So here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to do a brief overview of MTSS, PBIS, right? And answer the question, how do we know PBIS is working? We're going to go over our social emotional learning supports and talk about our desired outcomes. RISE. Here's our meeting expectations today. We will be responsible for our actions and interactions during this meeting. We will be active participants in this meeting. We will create a safe learning space and ask meaningful questions in this space. And we will have an open mind in our decisions and deferring points of view. I almost feel like I'm in everybody. I'll try over here. All right, I did a glossary for us because, you hear all these terms all the time and it becomes like this huge alphabet soup, right? So you hear MTSS is a multi-tier system of supports where we'll talk about RTIs, our academic supports. We'll mention that. PBIS, our behavior support, positive behavior interventions. TFI, that is our PBIS implementation measurement tool that you'll be able to see today. The NNPS is our national network for partnership schools. We'll talk about, that's more about our family engagement pieces. Again, RISE, responsible, involved, safe, and empathy. UDL is our proactive, differentiated approach. And SEL, of course, social emotional learning. MTSS, right? When we think about RTI, our academic supports, and our PBIS, our behavior supports, equals the MTSS. It's our whole entire systems aligned for all students. Now, I left this last sentence here when you hear MTSS is not a special ed initiative like RTI was. I put that line there because a lot of times we use RTI for special ed only. And that's not the purpose of the response to your intervention. So think about the mind shift. What if we're now seeing gifted kids, right? And we're having these same meetings with even gifted kids, and how do we stretch them further? How are we looking at the students that fall in the middle and the supports they need and bring them forth? So it shouldn't be like, hey, it's just for special ed, but it's working with all students. And why are we doing it, right? Just ensure that equity and access is happening with all students. MTSS, when you think about the overall framework of systems and supports for all students, how we bring it school-wide in this tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. As you see, 80 to 90% of your students should be at your tier 1, 5 to 10% at tier 2, and 1 to 5 at your tier 3. When you think about tier 1 instruction, what does that mean? When you think about, you want at least have it effective, at least 80% is reaching benchmarks. And all students should be receiving that tier 1 instruction. Tier 2, that's more of the small groups. So it's students receiving targeted tier 1 plus some additional supports. And then your tier 3, it's more intensive and customized to those students, right? Having tier 1 and tier 2 and including some additional, more explicit, customized just for that individual. Okay, were there any questions on that? Okay, the PBIS, right? Now, for PBIS, I brought Josh Priest here. Josh Priest is with our state support team. He works very closely with us in ensuring that we are actively engaged in doing what we need to do as far as PBIS. He helps us out a lot, and he also helps us in our family engagement pieces. Josh, you need to use the microphone.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have to. You have
that's
to.
We do need it.
They're like, yes, you do.
It's for
Yeah.
home.
It's for home.
Okay, sounds good, everybody in TV land. We'll just go over the basic PBIS, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, so I'm not going to teach you anything new, but we will talk about some of the data and how we know this is happening in our schools. The basic principles of it, we know that, you know, reading, swimming, multiplying, driving, we're teaching our students every step of the way. We want to make sure that we can answer that last question. When a student doesn't know how to behave or meet the expectations in a certain place, that we're definitely teaching and not going straight for punishment. The reason why we're doing it is not just because it's best practice, but also because the law was passed in 2013, updated within the last 3 years in House Bill 318 to make sure that schools and districts have an understanding of what PBIS is and what it is not. And the quick word about token economy, and I always put this in here because a lot of us, our mind first goes off, and this includes me as an educator. We think that token economy is equal to PBIS and PBIS is equal to token economy. That is not the token economy can be a wonderful part of the PBIS framework, because that's what PBIS is a framework, but it is only a small portion of it. There's a lot of paradigm shifts that happen within it as well. Some of the 9 basic components are, we want to make sure, and a lot of this is covered within the TFI, which we'll be talking about next. Administrative commitment and consistent involvement throughout the entire process. This isn't something that can merely be delegated. This is a team effort that we have to take with this. Establish team-based structures, which Oberlin does very well with TBTs, BLTs, DLTs, a whole bunch of different names with letters in front of them, so that the secret is they're a team getting together, they're looking at data, they're making decisions based off of that data, and then coming back later on during the next meeting to say, these decisions worked, or these decisions didn't work, or we need to give them a little bit more time. A consensus on 3 to 5 behavioral expectations. Spoiler alert, you went through that already. We're talking about RISE, and RISE is all around us: responsible, involved, safe, and empathy. And I love how you use that and even model it within the board meetings. My hat's off to you. Systematic teaching of behavioral expectations. So we're not just telling the students what to do and expecting them to do it. We are actually reinforcing. We are giving them an explicit instruction on what to do and what it looks like. We have a system for reinforcing desired behaviors and a system for correction of behavioral errors. A lot of times when people hear PBIS, they think of, oh, we only talk about good behaviors. No, this is a system where we acknowledge when expectations aren't met as well. We make data-based decision-making within those teams. We have the multi-tiered system of supports. I tell people all the time, I don't get paid unless I have a presentation with this triangle in it, symbolizing MTSS. And then maintaining culturally responsive practices, which is a fancy way of saying this is customized for Overland. We can't take another system and cut and paste it right here. We have to develop this to make sure it fits the needs of our students, of our staff, so that it can be effective. Now, using data to see okay, how do we measure all this? That's a lot of stuff to know. How on earth are we measuring this? Well, we use the TFI, which is what the state recognizes as the measurement for implementation. And the purpose of, when you see SWPBIS, that's school-wide PBIS, otherwise known as Tier 1. That's the stuff that every student gets within the building. It's to provide a valid, reliable, and efficient measure of the extent of which the school personnel are applying the core features of school-wide PBIS. So this is what we use. It's a big packet. You can even do a Google search that says PBIS TFI, and you can have your very own copy of the TFI. So if you'd like to follow along. Right here, this is just a sample of some of the data that we used, particularly with the high school. And we kind of chart it and make it look a little bit prettier. Now, it may look a little bit confusing, but the TFI, the first initial Tier 1, is basically 15 questions or 15 things that the team talks about, the main PBIS team. And this is the data we use to measure, are we implementing this well with Fidelity, or are there areas that we need to work on? They rank themselves from 0 to 2, and then we kind of color code them. And they discuss these, and they celebrate the highs, and they concentrate on some of the areas for improvement so that we can create, eventually, an action plan of what we're going to do for next steps. And we try to concentrate on 1 or 2 goals at a time, because if you're concentrating on everything, you're really doing nothing very well. So they have a laser-like focus on 1 or 2 main goals. As you can see through some of the key, they chose to do some of the lowest ones first, so that that's the lowest hanging fruit, so they can make improvements. They have what the actions are, who's going to do that, when's going to do it by, and then they have a final score. Later on, they'll come by and do the exact same thing again. Sometimes their numbers will change and everything, and then there we go. And then they can actually measure the progress and see their progress as it's happening and create the new action step to say, okay, great, we mastered this. Let's move on to the next thing. So they're always in a cycle of growth throughout each time, and the percentages tend to go up. Sometimes they go down a little bit due to things like COVID, which no one saw that coming, where it specifically shows the highs and the lows and where we can improve, and that's how they use the TFI data. Are there any questions on the tiered fidelity inventory or anything PBIS?
I just want to clarify one thing. I heard
Please.
you say, so this is teachers measuring themselves on the implementation of PBIS in this.
This is the main leadership team for each school. That's correct.
So the administrators.
An administrator is usually involved on the PBIS teams, yes. Yeah, but it also contains people like teachers, paraprofessionals, in a lot of cases, even cafeteria workers, janitorial staff, things like that.
We rolled PBIS throughout the whole district.
Yes.
Mhm.
But each school will have their own team
Right.
as well. Then we have a district level team.
So now how do they, I'm sure you covered this, but I don't think I caught it. How do they determine whether they're at the pink, the yellow, orange, like what's used to determine the level of implementation they're at?
It's the discussion of the team, and they have to have evidence in order to prove where they are. When they're doing it, and usually, quite honestly, the teams are the harshest on themselves. As an outside person coming in, I'm like, guys, you don't even realize you're doing this already. Here's proof A, B, and C. And they're like, oh, yeah, we are doing that a little bit. So sometimes it takes an outsider's point of view to be like, you're doing a lot better than you think. But it is a discussion within the lead team to say, we can produce evidence for this, 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 and this. This, we don't have just yet. We'll need to get that.
So and they kind of like track it, like is it points or something like
That's
that?
correct. That's exactly what it is. It's a point system. Each one of those they rate it from 0, 1, or 2. It's usually a team that gets together, and they'll talk about one of the particular points, and then everybody will put up 0, a 1, or a 2. And then if there's a 2 and a 0, there's a conversation that needs to take place there, and then they talk about the evidence that they have to support it.
Okay.
And that slide was from last school year.
Yeah, that's old data. I just brought those up because I had them, and I had a form of some of the action steps that they took.
And is there updated data, or we just have that?
We're starting to get everybody kind of on the same track of doing it. There were people that were just kind of leaders within the district that were looking at that way. They were doing the TFI, but they didn't put it in a colorful chart or anything like that. So now we're trying to get the entire district kind of on the same page and get into that cycle.
Okay, right, because it's neither of those administrators that were on that slide are at that school.
That's correct. That's correct.
Well, we did do that data last month, so we can plug that in. We did get that.
Yeah, that's old data. I apologize for that. Any other questions? Those are good questions.
Thank you.
All right. And I'll pass the mic and clicker over to Jay.
Appreciate you, sir. All right. Okay. Staff supports. What we did was every building did a staff survey. Okay, that was our baseline. It was about 75% of our students at all buildings did a staff survey. And out of the staff survey, here were the 6 trends throughout the whole building that we discovered on the survey. Communication, how they were receiving communication. Discipline, how we were doing discipline and the follow-through of discipline. Visibility, they wanted to see the leaders more. Expectation, what do you want from us? What are you asking of us? And after we've known, how are you going to hold us accountable? And then the last one was stress, of course, high stress. So the customized support, every time we had a leadership conversation with our building leaders, it was around these 6 elements. You know, anytime we had a discussion, we tried to focus our professional development and our learning around one of these 6 things. We gave them planning time, brain breaks, yoga, which you've experienced, another wellness checks. We understand that staff aren't clinicians. This is a matter of, hey, I noticed that Dr. Hall, he doesn't seem like himself. And one of the counselors will check in with you and see how you're doing and see if you need any resources or just need to talk or everything is fine, you just didn't have coffee yet. Physical activities and our partnerships through Metro Parks and the Splash Zone and the Lorain County Health Department.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
What are brain breaks?
Oh, definitely. There are brain breaks when you just have an opportunity just that you are not with students, right? You're not with students. You're not looking at computers. You're just woo-sign, if you will.
So that's not planning time.
Nope.
Got it.
Nope. And which we're very proud of, you see in one of the slides, and even in that, we've allowed in some of those times that staff can receive massages, that they didn't take their planning time, that we utilized Velvet Turtle, and we even gave them massages. 15 minutes. That's all we could give them was 15 minutes. I think Bob took like all the spots.
Is that generally how long it is?
Huh?
Is that generally how long it is?
Yes.
Sessions,
Ye-
12 minutes, and then it takes 3 minutes to wipe down the
Yeah.
machine.
But I
and
mean,
set for the next
even if it's not the massage, if they get a brain break, is it about 15 minutes?
About 15 minutes,
Got it,
yeah.
okay.
yeah.
And do the teachers get those every day?
The massages, which one?
No, the brain breaks.
The brain break.
Pretty much. You get them every day. Yep.
I guess I'd like to see some information on
How that
if the
happens.
teachers are having time to utilize that, and also, I know with our shortage in subs that their planning time is often being used to cover another class. So I'd like some information on that as well.
Like how they actually doing these brain breaks if they're covering classes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like are we actually giving them time for these brain breaks and their planning time?
Yeah. Okay. We'll give you that information. And you're right, they are covering a lot, and there is a shortage. I'm sorry? Yeah.
You're saying it depends on the building?
It
It's
depends
not
on the
same for
building.
each building?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. As you saw, the just reminding from this Monday, we just gave an example of that. Wednesday motivation. We try to do a Wednesday motivation. Just to kind of recharge, reflect, refocus. It's the middle of the month, middle of the week. Again, the staff needs assessment is really around those staff surveys. Here was something that we were real proud of that they did here at Overland Elementary, the staff bingo, in a way to increase team building. They were able to do this thing, staff bingo, to find out stuff about other staff that you really wouldn't think, which was like, hey, I jumped out of the plane, I did this and that. You'd be surprised who did those things. And out of that, all the participants, which we were proud of, got $5 Oberlin bucks. that they can use in Overland for lunch or whatever they like to do. We talked about the staff check-ins. Well, the staff check-in supports are really the social worker and the counselors are doing these staff check-ins, and as they see stuff in the classroom, they give them tips for classroom management. Velvet Turtle is the place that did the massage. The sports training, that's more at the high school with our assistant principal. As we think about wellness, the physical health, it's around emotional health and mental health, the physical health. He is doing exercises and things like that and training with staff that sign up for it with him. Our Sure partners, that's our insurance partners that we use that our staff can take advantage of different resources that our insurance pay for. What are desired outcomes? Why are we doing this for staff? Staff retention. Here's what we're trying to do better. We're trying to create an exit interview. You know, when you do leave, why do you leave? And what can we do better? So we're in the process of creating that. And then a supportive, positive school culture. How do you even measure that? You know, you measure it through our climate surveys. We already did a we'll do another one right around after spring break. And we hope that we want to improve student instruction. We want to improve relationships with students, family, and the community, and our supports. Why are we doing what we're doing as far as behavior and academics? It's because we always do it, and we constantly have that battle, past practice versus best. Why are we doing what we're doing? And just that mind shift again. We teach students, not just subjects, okay?
Jay, can I make a comment on that last slide?
Sure.
In number 1, you talked about exit interviews.
Yeah.
One of the best practices that we've been rolling out in the business world is the concept of stay interviews. So you no longer are solely focusing on the people who have decided to leave.
Yeah.
But you pause and you reflect on those who are opting to stay.
Yeah.
What is it about their day that they look forward to?
Yeah.
And give them the opportunity to make comments about things. If you could change one thing, what would
Yeah.
it be? There's a whole series of questions and,
Yeah.
and just a guide that you can follow for stay interviews. And
Yeah.
you know that it really sets an interesting culture with this concept of, yes, I see you, I appreciate you, and I really am actively listening to what you're saying you need.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for volunteering to be on that committee.
Just don't do it on the third Thursday.
Appreciate that. Student survey. 75% of our students completed this survey with our surveys. And here are the trends, right? Stress, anxiety, relationships, and confidence. Out of those 75, 25% of those students responded that they felt anxious and wanted some help. So during that time, our counselors and and the social worker worked with those students. And if it was something beyond their capacity, we then referred them to Applewood.
And when was this survey? This was the beginning of
The
the school
beginning
year?
of the year.
I'm surprised it was only 25%.
Yeah. Yeah, we were too.
Is this the first year we've done that survey?
I'm not sure, but since I've been here. Yeah. Student support, here's, when we talk about office disciplinary referrals, we're trying to get better with this, okay? As how we collect that data. Right now, different buildings had data at different places. So our building leaders went through a training with a power school, so we now can have it all in one place, run reports, and actually see the deficits and differences in different things, right? And it also helps, remember the first 6 components that they talked about, discipline and follow through. Now teachers can get the discipline and follow through almost immediately through prior school when they send the referral. They know in real time what's going on. So we're getting better at all of us is doing it in every building, but at least we have a system where all that exists. Attendance, it happens, we meet every Thursday. Every building, we have an attendance team. We meet about students and we talk, and it's everything between just giving Johnny an alarm clock all the way to they may need counseling. Again, we analyze the building surveys and the youth troop surveys. One of the things that we did with this data that we're proud of, that the BLTs use the youth troop surveys, and what they've done is, just give you an example of at Langston Middle, what they did was the students that scored the lowest, they made goals based on that. For example, 2 things that scored lowest: family engagement and students taking pride of their work, and not understanding the work that they're doing, how this is not just an assignment, but how it relates to real world. So BLT made goals with that. So that was good to be able to have some of the youth truth surveys and youth truth data and actually using it. So I'm really proud of that too. Some of the supports, we've increased individual counseling, and we've done that by adding, we just had 1 clinician from Applewood. Now we have 2, with the potential to get 1 more based on needs. We address basic needs, and that's anywhere from food and clothing. We've involved our community partners and resources. We have groups, we'll talk about that. Restorative practice, trying to do better, right? It wasn't just restorative practice, 1 professional development, but how do we make it ongoing? How do we utilize it in our discipline, right? How do teachers use it too, not just our building leaders, right? How do you use restorative practices in your classroom management and bringing students back into the fold and understanding, yes, you can start over. You know how we like to keep scores. You got in trouble, I'm watching you, kind of a thing. But hey, you can come back, you can do better, and you can do better. Zen rooms, calm spaces in every building. We'll see that. We'll talk about that. Encouraging socialization opportunities, encouraging students to be more active in the groups and clubs. Some more examples, SEL examples. The Ridge project we did at the high school, 45 of students participated in it. It was character development and life choices. The monthly food drops in conjunction with the Oberlin Community Service and Second Harvest. Weekend bags from OCS, and also the backpack program. Currently 75 families use that weekly at Oberlin Elementary. The Phoenix Pantry at the high school is up and going now in conjunction with Oberlin Community Services and Second Harvest. The mobile pantry is now up once a month. I believe that's Saturdays at 11 o'clock at the high school. We were able to receive over $7,000 in clothing and book bags and shoes and et cetera. All 3 buildings have access. They implement it and distribute with our counselors. We've done resource nights twice, bringing in outside agencies and community partners just to give family and students various resources. Safe routes is what our Lorraine Community Health Department, health department. That's more promoting walking to school, riding bikes to school. The Live Healthy Oberlin, it really helps and supports us on mental health, physical health, emotional health, and that's countywide with all our partners. And it's really, actually, it's a strong focus with Oberlin and Wellington. Our calm areas, all right? Each calm area is connected to our counselors, and it averages about 15 students use this area. 15 minutes, they only have 15 minutes, not 15 students at one time, but 15 minutes. And then we have it connected to the counselors, because that way we can still take a look at the students, like how are you feeling? We're still not just sending them back to class and they're still at a heightened state. So they have an opportunity to kind of talk with the counselor. The OES, when it says it's in progress, because when we started out, we had grant funding dollars and we were able to utilize it for the high school and the middle school, and Oberlin Elementary was not done yet. They do at least have a space, and we're trying to utilize that space more. Ms. Biggio and Mr. Icecamp, who's here, he's been working very hard on that.
What's the Zen, where is the Zen Den area in the high school?
The Zen Den is, it almost sounds like a club. Welcome to the Zen Den. But it's, are you familiar where the counselors are at the high school? Mm-hmm. In the back room is connected. It's a nice space. There's a couch, there's a table right there. So they have to, in order to utilize it, they see Ms. Daniels first. Ms. Daniels will let somebody know, hey, Jay is using the space, and so they can time it, and then the counselors can check in on them. And then at the middle school, same way, right in the counselor space.
And so how does a student go about getting access to that? like, how do they have to let the teacher know?
They,
Send a
they,
note?
they would either let the teacher know, or they would let the teacher know, or the teacher would obviously see that they need it, and they will let them use it.
Okay,
so
so
it's both.
sometimes it's directed, it's from the encouragement of a teacher that
Yes.
the student take the time. Okay, gotcha.
And we time it because we don't want people to take, because we don't ask questions, but we don't want you to take advantage of it. I need time, because you got to take a test. No, you don't take your test. So, groups. Here we have at Mr. Icecamp. Would you like to talk about some of the groups that we're doing? I brought you here at Oberlin Elementary. Actually, I want you to talk about Icecamp. I want you to talk about the second step and stuff that you do. Yeah. Yeah. I want you to talk about that too. It's up there. Yeah. I'm gonna keep my clicker.
We can keep your clicker. So I'll go with the second step, social emotional lessons. Basically, I do what is tier 1 supports for social emotional learning in every classroom in the building once a week. So I do K through 5. Miss Baker, the school psychologist, does preschool. And I am in every classroom once a week talking about social emotional learning, whether it's emotional management, self-management, goal setting, empathy, bullying prevention, keeping yourself safe from others, keeping yourself safe with others. We go in, every student receives a lesson in their classroom. There's homework with these. They can go home to create that school-home communication piece so they understand what we are learning, and they can also support that learning. And it's a good thing where it builds upon each other, where the lessons are similar, K through 5, but they get meatier and meatier as they go, so it builds upon each other, so they're hearing the same kind of language. And we build it into the PBIS and to the International Baccalaureate. All those kinds of things kind of flow into that program, so they're all getting that kind of information. And then with the teachers, we can talk about kids who are just having a hard time with certain aspects. Maybe those are some of the kids that I can get to individually, or if there's a classroom that the whole class has lost it on a certain thing, I can reteach a lesson in that classroom. So we use the second step as a backbone for a lot of the work that I do, and then there's other pull-out supports for that. At the end of the year, there's a summative assessment to see what the kids have learned, and I use that basically to gauge how the delivery system has gone. I look at that data to say, okay, this worked, this didn't work so well this year. Why didn't it work so well? What can I do differently next year to help it work? Or kindergarten, first grade, second grade got this, third grade didn't. Why didn't third grade get it? And what do I have to do when they're in fourth grade to help them get it the next year? And then we use that to, like I said, to do small group supports or anything like that.
What's
Any
really
questions?
unique about that too as well is I had the opportunity to observe Mr. Icecamp doing the second step program. The teacher's actually in the room with them, so it's not like a planning period, teachers are gone, but they're all together, and the teacher later on referenced those things, those key things as Mr. Icecamp reinforces during that lesson time. And this year what they started doing too is our SRO, Officer Needham, he started to integrate those things within Officer Needham, so they see a different light of Officer Needham as well. So those are some things we've been working on this year of some tough topics. Officer Needham may come in and work with the students, and that's a different eyesight they may see the police officer as. So that's been helping out.
Yeah, I had him
Well,
come in
appreciate
when we did the child protection unit, and we're talking about things like never rules, never ride on wheels without a helmet, or never touch guns and things like that. And it was nice to have him there so they could get another, advantage point and see that kind of stuff when we're talking about being safe in the community, being safe with others. Any questions about the program?
My 12th grader still sings the song that you taught them in 4th grade.
They all do. Yeah, they'll come up and sing it, and then that costs extra.
Pass the hat around.
So, and Dr. Hall hit on the last with the SRO. Along with that, he also has lunch buddies on Tuesday here at Oberlin Elementary.
So what does that mean, lunch buddies?
Lunch, they get to have lunch with Officer Needham.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
Just him or do any other officers from
well,
Oberlin?
right now it's just him, because there was a grant with this first responders period, and we're still trying to work that out, but right now, he's the one that's doing it right now. Yeah, thank you. Langston Middle, there's a girls' code group, 11 students weekly, the anxiety, mindfulness group, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, lunch buddies at there, and You Belong is for the entire student body. Here's what, in every group that I'm showing today, every group, there's a pre and post for all those groups that I'm showing, because we kept asking the question, why are we doing it? We've been doing the same thing. Why are we doing it? So each group, the counselors have done a pre and post. Well, right now it's just pre. We haven't done the post yet, but we at least have done the pre on all of these groups.
Surveys?
Yes.
Pre and post surveys?
Yes.
Gotcha.
At the high school, rocks groups for girls, about 10 weekly. A boys confidence group, 10 boys weekly. And this IB group is about 15 students monthly, and I believe Kristen Miller runs this one. Individual counseling. Again, what we are averaging about 15 students weekly with our social worker at the high school, and around 10 students weekly in our counselors that they're actually seeing students. We're doing mediations with these students, restorative circles, the parent meetings. We're having parent meetings and attendance meetings that we talked about that are happening. That's with all the buildings every Thursday. Desired outcomes, increase student retention, improve the attendance rates, increase positive school culture, again, and that'll be measured by student climate surveys. Any questions? Okay.
Is the Youth Truth Survey the student climate survey? Because I know that
Yes.
is one that we have done multiple times now.
A Youth Truth Survey, they've used that, and we've created our own survey. We did two.
In your example that you used where you said the Youth Truth Survey in Langston pointed out that there was an issue with family engagement, what did you implement as a result of that? And did you touch on it already?
I did not touch on it, and that's what we try to do better, right? With even establishing the parent groups and getting parents more involved. The most that we've seen as far as our parents groups is when we do meet about attendance.
Right.
We want to do something more beyond attendance when we meet about that. So we need to do better with our parent involvement.
One of the first things I remember hearing about PBIS was the fact that, you were getting a call home and it wasn't something bad.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so, does what you just said mean that that's not happening so much, and it's the parental involvement is now?
No, that part is happening. At least I know, like I just looked at, but it was too hard to read. Just at Oberlin Elementary, they have positive referrals to students, and they have positive phone calls. And between Ms. Baker, Ms. Biggio, and Mr. Icecamp, they are calling parents home, calling home about their student. Hey, this is great. Just trying to change the narrative. So when you see Oberlin phone number, you don't run. You're excited to get it. And also, in the marquee, when you go up running, it says, "Hey, Jay was awesome. He did all these things when you come in." And so they get to see that, and they really like that. So we are increasing the phone calls in all the buildings, but really, Oberlin Elementary is a rock star building out of the three.
And that was something Ms. Biggio did really well at the high school, which I feel like is lacking this year. So it would be nice to maybe re-implement that over the air. You used to see on the high school's Facebook page, which kid got the shout out
Okay.
that
Yeah.
week.
I
All
haven't
right,
seen
take
that.
note of that. Thank you. Okay, this last part, I'm bringing it on home because I see Bob look at his watch twice and already threatened me earlier today. Oh, you're fixing your shirt. Okay, sorry. The Overland Social Equity Provision and Plan. So there's some work that we did. The City Council authorized Robert Hilliard to organize a social equity working group in March of 2020. And then out of that group, he selected members to be a part of that social equity work group. And out of that, 13 subject groups was established. And here are the groups: economic opportunity, housing, education and community, justice, transportation, police relations, education and school, mental health, government, healthcare, food equity, empowerment, environmental sustainability, and recreation. So I kind of highlighted some areas that that the school focused on, so you can see how we connected it. So it wasn't just a whole year and a half of just working with the city, but how we as a district also collaborated with them and dealt with some of these subjects. So what I did was I asked my friend Ray English to come to kind of talk on some of these points. Mr. English, you also have to start off by singing the school song.
I can't help you there. So, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
So, thank you, Jay. Appreciated getting the invitation to come over and just speak for a few minutes to you. So, I was one of 3 city council members who were part of the social equity provisional planning process, me and Elizabeth Meadows, and Mary Price. Thank you for whoever helped me on that. Thank you. And there were 15 members of the working group, but when you take into account all the subgroups, there were actually about 30 people. It was a very inclusive group representing all sections of the community, and I thought that for the most part we worked together really well. Now, out of these 13 subgroups, there were produced a ton of potential tasks that we could do in the area of social equity. Some of this, in many ways, was brainstorming, and we're going to face a process of prioritizing, selecting, and finalizing a plan. And it'll take a little while before we have a final plan. But don't despair, we won't be planning forever. The City Council has reconstituted a social equity working group, and we're moving forward to do some things right now, and I'll come back to that in just a second. But let me talk about, Jay highlighted some areas. Let me mention some others just to give you a sense of what we're hoping that Oberlin could do. In the area of housing, we need affordable housing, and we need it very badly. And there are things that we can do to move forward in that regard. The city owns land. We can leverage that. We can work with nonprofits to do that. There are things that we can do to work in those few instances where we have slum landlords who are creating housing situations that are really not acceptable. Those are things we need to work on in that area of housing. There are some areas where I think there's real opportunity for the city to cooperate with the schools. And I'm thinking one thing that jumps out to me is economic opportunity. I don't know if any of you have followed what's going on in the city of Elyria, but Frank Whitfield promoted a program called Elyria Skill City. Have any of you heard of that program? So basically they devoted some city funds. They had a partnership with Lorraine Community College, partnerships with local businesses and manufacturers, and the city committed some money. They partnered with Lorraine County Community College, had lots of financial aid for students, and they managed to create a very visible program that would allow students to fast track into jobs, either directly into a job that didn't require any kind of training, or into training that would fast track them into a job. A very visible program that creates potential economic impact for Oberlin and potentially creates a more equitable community. Now, there's potential there to work with the schools. There's the potential. We have real interest from Lorraine Community College in working with Oberlin. We met with their president, their senior staff. They are excited to be cooperating with Oberlin in various social equity areas. I want to talk just a little bit about education in community. One of the things that I think came out of our group is that we need a way in Oberlin to talk more honestly, more and respectfully, and in a caring way about issues of race in Oberlin. We pride ourselves, I think, as a community on being progressive on issues of race. The reality is we've learned quite a lot about a history of racial discrimination in Oberlin. Neighborhoods that were developed that excluded blacks through legal covenants. Neighborhoods that were developed that were all white into the 50s. Discrimination related to recreation, and particularly issues of a public swimming pool, and there's a long history there. Carol Lesser, who taught in the history department at Oberlin, has done wonderful research on this, and she and her husband Gary Kornbluth published a book on this that covered the early history of race in Oberlin up until 1915 or 1920 or so. Carol is working to move that history forward. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy relating to discussions of issues of race in the schools. It's my feeling that we can find a way as a community, and I hope you can find a way in the schools to talk about these issues, again, in a way that is respectful and caring and honest. You have a wonderful example of someone who does that every day, and that's Kurt Russell. Okay, I want to talk I need to wind up. How long did you want me to talk, Jay? Okay, I'll quit here quickly and just tell you what's going to happen next. We're working with the Center for Community Solutions in Cleveland. They've received a grant from the Nord Family Foundation to work with us on moving the social equity planning process forward. They are going to be developing detailed data on social equity disparities in Oberlin. So we will get a sense of, I hope even at the neighborhood level, what are average incomes in certain neighborhoods? What is average wealth in certain neighborhoods? What kind of health disparities do we have in our community? So we can look at all of that, and we have that kind of data, we're better positioned to be able to talk about these sorts of things. The Center for Community Solutions is also going to be doing community outreach. They're developing a rather extensive survey and focus groups to really get community input into the things that we have suggested in our provisional plan. I am really interested in learning things like what are differences in perceptions of the Oberlin police depending on where you live in Oberlin, and things like that. The next step after that will be to develop a full social equity plan, a final one, and that's going to take a little while, but the social equity working group that's been reconstituted is going to jump right in right away. We want to work on the economic opportunity aspect and also affordable housing. And I am really interested in seeing if we can get, for the city of Oberlin, a social equity coordinator position in place to really make this sort of thing happen in an ongoing way. So that's my song and dance. Happy to answer any quick questions. I'll just say again, I think there are real opportunities for the city to work cooperatively with the schools, with Oberlin Community Services, and with the other local institutions. And We really appreciate Jay's participation in the process. Kurt Russell was also part of one of the subgroups, the Education in Schools group. So, does that do it, Jay?
Thanks, Ray.
Thanks, Ray.
So the police and police relations, you can see that we use that with our SRO, really, how we're utilizing our SRO and education in schools, how we're utilizing the data and the mental health, how we're doing that, and how do we encourage families of color to access the mental health they needed. And the food equity, we've talked about it, and even the recreation, even working with the splash zone, you know, that they have that, like the walking that we do on Mondays. Questions and comments and concerns. Before we do that, I do want to just hit this real quick. Some of the district equity initiatives. You know, we did a cultural humility training through the ESC, and all the representatives from all, we got representatives from each building to be a part of this cultural humility training. I mean, which included also some building leaders, and they had the opportunity to share out at staff meetings. So when we think about all these trainings, the unconscious bias training, that was also through the ESC. How do we do these trainings that they're not a one and done thing? How do we incorporate it as all year? We're utilizing the stuff we've learned all year long, and let everyone get it, not just the participants of the actual training. And the district equity committee, and I know Semeco's part of that some of that initial work, and that's still ongoing, just in how we're looking at data, how we're looking at academics, and how we're looking at different supports. So, and we have a diversity recruiting that's coming up just to ensure that our staff looks like our student body.
When was the cultural humility training?
The cultural humility training, there were two. There were one before Christmas break and one after at the ESC.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And our plan is even moving forward, how to utilize some of those trainings starting next year, right? That is ongoing. So in doing that, as we concentrate on literacy and building positive culture and all these things, the focus is really, how do we do these things all year long? Because it's a lot of things that we go to, only a few people go, and it's a one and done thing, but how are we really taking advantage of all these trainings so all staff can participate in that? It trickles down to the students that we serve.
And then what about the unconscious bias training?
That happened this year and last year, twice, both at the ESC.
Okay. And so again, you're saying certain staff members attend those, not everybody.
Right.
Okay.
So we were able to try to get a representative from each building, you know, and there at least one building leader to go.
I remember there being an unconscious bias day that was right before a summer retreat, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember hearing about the plates with the beads on it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's stuck with me all these years later.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think that was dozens of
Oh,
people.
yes. We did a restorative practices training with that, unconscious biases, and we had the entire staff engage in that.
Yeah.
And that was in collaboration with the teachers union. And this year, our goal was to have 100% trained restorative practices. So our OPSI staff actually engaged in the training as well. We do know, basically, we need sustainability. We need to keep going with it. And throughout the pandemic piece, it was kind of to the point of, we were a little slowed down a little bit, but now we know we're going to ramp this back up. We did have some unconscious biases training, humility training going on this year. We were limited of having entire staffs together for certain things because the restorative practice training truly involved, you needed staff together and the impact of it. Our focus for next year and completing this year as we train and get ready for next year is IB, literacy and equity. We know we have to have someone come in and provide a training for 100% of our staff to be trained, not just at the beginning of the year, but throughout the year we have PDs. Those are our training points. We need to start back with restorative circles. We have to start embedding this in our daily routines that what we're doing every day. So these things have to happen for our staff as well. I know Kurt Russell actually engaged in a training last PD for our Langston staff, and his theme was building connections. And that's truly someone we don't utilize. He's not teacher of the, state teacher of the year for nothing. So, and I believe that's because of the relationships he's created. We need to involve him in some of those training points too, and to share some of his tactics. One of the things we like to do too is have our teachers observe other classrooms as well. If Mr. Reinhardt is having a great job, relationships with his students, we should be able to go talk to him and share best practices. So we're moving that direction where, as we get out of the pandemic pieces, hopefully, so we can move in the direction of having these deep conversations that we need to have. Basically, school systems have branched beyond academic needs. We're going to have to access to physical wellness, social emotional wellness, pantries. We have to go beyond those points. I can recall too, about a week ago, or about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Jay Nenemy and I received a text message on Friday. One of the students were left their house. So Jay and myself and a coach was on a texting back and forth. Well, that involves a lot. Services we have to find for the students, where the student's going to stay, make sure the student has food, make sure these things happen for our students. So we were on the phone all night trying to mediate between a parent, mediate between the student, to make sure the student's okay, and also make sure that a parent's getting support. Not just that day, but throughout the school year as well. That student has to return back home, so they have to have a dialogue back and forth. So those are some things that we have to worry about, not just the academic piece, but that child comes back to school on Monday, he's more worried about where I'm going to stay, do I have food, are my parents going to let me back in? Those are the things going through the head. So along with equity and those areas, we have to start thinking about as well as a school system.
So I have a question about, so this is one of our pillars in the strategic plan as well.
Yes.
So was this really a strategic plan update too? Or, I mean, it seems like
Yes.
we don't want to have multiple initiatives in
No.
the same area happening, obviously.
Yes,
So
yes.
this is related to, it's your group.
For MTSS, I'm sorry too, Farrah probably heard this about 50 times, a lot of stuff on here, the MTSS, the PBIS, the things, initiatives that we're doing with equity, the recruiting. And the board members has been here before, you probably heard this a lot through the strategic planning piece. And the same thing, we're still moving forward with these themes.
Progress. It's
Yes.
always progress.
Mhm.
So my question is, where's the data? Like, I know that we've had some challenges with collecting data because of COVID. We've heard that. But even in your presentation today, you mentioned data, and I don't remember seeing any. So I did take a note that with the TFIs, you do have some data that you just started to process. When would we be able to see that?
So here's my homework, just to recap, because I was going to recap because I heard it. Ms. Fago would like to know how we're using those brain breaks. And then I will give you copies of all of the, first of the TFI data and what that looks like, so you can see all 15 questions. You can see that data. You already have a copy of the Youth Trooper. We can resend that. If you would like copies of all the pre-surveys that we did with staff and students, you're welcome to that. Do you want all the data or just specifically to PBIS? Or would you like to email me a list of data that you would like?
I would love to see the data, sorry.
No,
Farrah.
go ahead.
I would love to see the data in the school board Google Drive, just so that we have access to the data, so we
Okay.
can look at the parts of the data that we want to look at.
That's fair.
And I don't want the board to think that,
That works.
even we have administrative meeting tomorrow. And one of the things in my folder for our administrative meetings, as Misha's back there, she's thinking some of this is data points that we're going to be looking at with discipline data, referral data, getting us all in one system of where, and also breaking it down by ethnicity, grade level. So those things we do constantly look at, and we also go over with our staff too at the same time. And Ben's probably in some of those meetings, some of our staff are okay, we're talking data, but we do look at those things to guide some decisions. One of the great things for this year was we have Power School, and all the referrals and things are going into Power School. So we have the data of where insubordination is coming out, whether it's ninth grade, certain kids, and we'll provide that resource for them. We also have looked at, and the board I've heard before, the Youth Truth Survey, of taking some hard look at you know, some of the things the students are saying, their voices. So you will be seeing more data, and my staff do know that, and Jay always hear you. How do we know?
Right.
How do we know if it's working? Prove it's working. Okay, that's fine, Danny, but how do we know? So they've been charged with everything we do of, we need to know if it's working or not. If not, then why is it not working and what are we doing? And I need to see that data as superintendent as well. And like I said, in our folder, we're going to look at some of our academic pieces, breaking our academic pieces down by equitiness advantage. Something to look forward to tomorrow, Mrs. Baker. But those are things you're already looking at anyway. So we have those points we're going to be looking at too as well, but we're constantly looking at them.
And you're looking at not just the current data point, but the trend.
Yes, yes, yes.
And that's what I would like to see. I mean, I know you can't necessarily present all the data that you all are constantly looking at a meeting like this, but if you put a graph up there or you put, you know, some type of diagram up there, it speaks to us in another way than just hearing you report on it. I hear all
Absolutely.
of what you're doing, but I also want to see the evidence of whether or not it's working, you know?
Yeah, I would appreciate the Youth Truth Survey being sent back out again. I just checked my email, searched for Youth Truth. I don't find it. Obviously, I'm sure, I trust that it's there, but I can't find it, so I appreciate if you send it to me again.
I will give all that data in the board doc, the Google Drive that they're talking about. Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else? I'm taking notes.
Well, I'm just really pleased. I'm pleased that we're doing more surveys.
Mhm.
I think that motivation is everything.
Yep.
And the more that we can understand about how our students perceive our schools, the better we can help them learn.
Thank you, sir.
I agree. I think that it'll be interesting to understand what the leading indicators are and the lagging indicators are. And so, you know, if they're happy with, you know, us giving them $5 or giving employees $5 cards, but then something else doesn't change. I don't know if it's the number of subs that we need or so. I mean, I don't know when you go to employees how you determine if our efforts are working. But I mean, it's not just about the kids, because I think we are concerned both about our employees and how they're coping with this crazy situation that we've been in for the last 2 years. But then also for the students, you know, we can do the Youth Truth Survey, but then it does come down to the discipline referrals and whatever's happening. You know, there definitely have to be the difference of the leading and lagging indicators.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to put another statistic up there, right? Because we've had enough. But I know as you and I work in our committee, our new committee, we can get more information. But when you think about trauma, right? We've heard trauma, and I can't even remember the percentage of trauma when we talk about where students and families deal with trauma. But due to the pandemic now, if you think about this number now, 100%.
Yeah.
It's 100%. That means everybody in this room have experienced trauma in relation to the pandemic in some way.
Yeah.
So now, as we look at social emotional supports for now staff and students, back in the, not long ago, all of the supports was really about what students needed, right? But as we see, our staff needs just as much support, if not more, because of this. And we're working very hard to do that. It's difficult as we talk. Sometimes we talk to staff is, what is it that you need? What we heard a lot is time. You need time. You need time. We gave them time, and they found out they needed more than time, right? So when you even talk to some staff, they're not even able to verbalize exactly what they need. They just recognize they need something. Okay, so I don't want to hold you anymore. Been up here a while. I do appreciate it. I do want to again thank Mr. Ice. He had a long day. Mr. Ice Camp for coming and being here.
Thank you, all of you.
Mr. Priest for being out here, and Mr. English, Ms. Julie that came out here. Ms. Baker, my data guru that keeps me. I really appreciate her being here. As well as I really appreciate you. I want to say that because all the time we've worked, you're concerned about the basic needs of students and what we're doing. Ms. Stagel, it's Stagel, right?
Yep.
Stagel, I, in the meetings that I've been in, I can hear that you're concerned about staff. I hear it. What are you doing for staff? And I really appreciate that. Dr. Stanley, I like how you keep me on my toes on numbers. Like, how are we doing on the numbers? And this will work. Ms. Emeka, always the equity pieces, right? Are all students getting this, right? And Ms. Cham, always the difficult questions, the necessary questions, the pulse of the community. I appreciate that. And Reinhardt, I really appreciate you. You just keep the money going. And Dr. Hall, I appreciate your leadership. And Steve, awesome Steve, as always. We always appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. I hope I wasn't too long, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jay.
Thanks, sir.
Anything else that you
Good.
want to say, Dr. Hall, on that?
Just like to thank our visitors and our guests. We know it's been a long night, and thank you for presenting or coming in and sharing as well. That's it.
All right, any other comments or questions from board members? All right, our next meeting, we are going to see each other next Tuesday for our regularly scheduled meeting, a week early. This is because of the spring break. So just, here's your gentle reminder. I guess maybe the other gentle reminder is we spring ahead on Sunday. So this is where we lose the hour. So hopefully by Tuesday you'll have it worked out.
Yeah.
But it'll still be late when we go.
That's right.
We'll come to the meeting in late and leave in late, hopefully.
That's a goal. All right, then our other meeting is April 26th, regularly scheduled meeting. All right, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Call the roll.
Mr. Stanley,
Yes.
Ms. Scottson. Yes. Ms. Stiegel,
Yes.
Ms. Emeka,
Yes.
Ms. Shaw.